Hi and good afternoon. It's noon. It's time for our media briefing for this Wednesday. We'll get started with our speakers. First, we have Mike Durr, who is our County Contracts Purchasing Officer. He's also the logistics lead for our emergency services, and he's here to talk about some changes in the OptumServe testing site in Salinas.
Yes, good afternoon. Just to give you an update, the current testing site at LaSalle High School will be relocating. The last day of operation will be Saturday at LaSalle High School. On Tuesday morning, the 26th, the testing site will reopen at its new location at the Office of the Agricultural Commissioner at 1432 Abbott Street, the Ag Cooperative Extension Meeting Room. And that will be effective Tuesday morning, the 26th.
Thanks very much, Mike. And if you would stay on the line for any questions that we might have from the press, that would be great. Our next speaker is Christabel Oropeza. She's a public health program manager for our health department, and she has some information for us about the Wic program, which is a very important nutrition program here in the county. And she's going to tell us more. Hi, Christabel.
Hi, good afternoon. So Christabel Oropeza, Public Health Program Manager. One of the programs I oversee is the Wic program, and I'll share with you in just a few brief minutes here how Wic is operating during this pandemic, and I'll walk you through just some general information about Wic eligibility, share some important information about Wic foods and formula and breastfeeding specific to this shelter-in-place time, and I'll briefly share with you how families can apply for Wic. So first and foremost, Wic is open during this pandemic, and I'm going to attempt to share some slides with you. I'm not sure here if you're able to see that. Can you see the slides, ma'am?
I am not seeing the slide.
Okay. I'm going to try one more time here and see if we can see them now.
No, not
okay.
yet. Sorry.
Just too bad. Okay, so we'll skip sharing the slides, unfortunately. I will share with you that so Wic has temporarily moved all of our operations to our Salinas and Soledad office. And while our lobbies are closed, our employees continue to see our families and new families. We are seeing everyone through either virtually or completing required classes and our nutrition education over the phone. Our orientations are also over the phone. When families do have to travel to the office, they are being asked to wait in their cars. And so Wic staff will go out to the cars if absolutely needed to pick up or deliver documents, Wic cards, etc. But we're communicating with most of our families through the phone. Many of us have been financially affected by the pandemic, and families who have not before been eligible for Wic are maybe eligible now due to either the loss of a job, loss of work hours, loss of income, and maybe now are falling within the Wic eligible income guidelines. So California serves just over 1 million people through Wic each month, and about half of these are children. California's participation numbers between the months of March and April increased by just over 50,000. So it's too soon for us locally to know what our local Wic participation counts are. Part of what's making this a little bit more complicated for us is that locally Wic was going through a computer system change just when the shelter-in-place order was occurred. And so getting those numbers is a little bit difficult for us, but we are giving it our best shot. What I can share with you is that our approximately 13,000 individuals in Monterey County are being served on a month-to-month basis through Wic. And that's our best estimate right now until we can get those numbers a few months from now. Wic is a supplemental nutrition program, and it provides access to nutritious foods through an electronic card. It's a WIC-wise card, and Wic also provides nutrition and education counseling, nutrition counseling, and breastfeeding counseling. WIC is not included in the public charge rule. So this means that immigrants cannot be denied legal status for having accessed WIC. To qualify for WIC, families must first have a gross income of no more than 185% of the federal poverty level. So I'm going to say that again because I think I confused folks with that. So families must have a gross income of no more than 185% of the federal poverty level. And for our families who are already on CalFresh, Medi-Cal, Cash Aid, CalWorks, they are automatically considered income eligible. In addition, once they have met that income eligibility, they must fall under certain criteria. And I had a very nice slide to share with you all, but I'll just kind of briefly read off some of them. I won't share everyone on the list, but either a pregnant woman, a woman breastfeeding, a baby under 1 year of age. And one that surprises folks a lot is that we do serve fathers. So fathers who are caring for their children, guardians, and also foster parents. Not everyone knows that we serve others through the Women, Infants, and Children program as well. Wic recipients, it can be tricky for our Wic recipients to find, challenging to find the foods that they need during this pandemic. It can be quite complicated. California Department of Public Health had received some reports that families in various parts of California were not able to find the WIC eligible food items. And so as a result, we saw that a lot of our vendors across the state nationally were limiting the numbers of items that folks could purchase. And so the state has also expanded the list of WIC eligible food items. Locally, shortly after the shelter-in-place order was placed, we surveyed our WIC vendors and found that for the most part, the majority had stocked items in place, but and they were in good supply, but what was low were dry grains. And so for that food item, for example, the state was able to add additional package sizes and canned varieties for our families to purchase these items and to fully utilize those WIC benefits. As far as formula, we've also heard that formula can be challenging to find in some cases due to COVID-19, or folks just stockpiling and buying more than what they actually need at this time. Locally, we did see that on social media and heard from some of our own families that many stores had low supplies of formula. But I want to share that not all stores have a low supply. We are finding that a good tip for our WIC participant families is to actually call ahead, call the store before shopping for formula to find out if the formula they need is there. Formula companies are not sending free formula. So there was a rumor on social media that if you called the 800 number on the back of the formula can, formula companies would send additional cases to you or cans, and that's just simply not true. Breastfeeding, in regards to breastfeeding, I'd like to share that the virus has not been detected in breast milk. So it's very important that we continue to support our parents, mothers who choose to breastfeed. The Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization have stated that mothers with COVID-19 can breastfeed. A mother with COVID or someone who has symptoms or has been exposed to a person who has the virus should definitely, absolutely take precautions. But these precautions could include things like washing her hands before and after touching the infant, wearing a mask, having others, maybe pumping and having others feed the infant if possible. As far as how to apply for WIC, so you can contact our local Salinas office or our South County office for families that think they may be potentially eligible for WIC. If you know someone, you can definitely share the information that both the Salinas and the South County office are open. And thank you. Thank you so much for the time. I'll turn this back to Maya.
Thanks very much, Christabel. And I think if you could send me your slides, I can share the slides with the people who are on the call, and they can take a look at them. That would be terrific. And then while we've got you here, are there any questions for Christabel and about the WIC program that we could ask her right now? No, so stand by in case any questions pop up. Thanks very much. And I see our CAO, Charles McKee, has joined the call, and we welcome him and his thoughts on this Wednesday.
Thank you, Maya. Some really important information so far being provided, especially by Christabel. I appreciate that. And Mike Durr notifying everyone that the LSL test site is going to be moving. So that's good information to get out there publicly. I think, as everybody knows, the county yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting heard that we are looking at presenting a attestation and variance documents to the Board of Supervisors next Tuesday. That is our goal. Hopefully we will be able to attain that goal, meet that goal. That's what we're shooting for, so that we can ask the board for their position on moving more quickly through the governor's stage 2 of reopening. There are a lot of pieces to that. I know that many people have looked at the metric criteria that our public health department has put up on their website and presented at the board, and it looks like we've met most of the criteria that the state has put forward as being able to move more quickly through phase 2 or stage 2. It should be noted that the criteria was changed by the governor's office and the state on Monday, and so we were quickly scrambling to put in those metrics to show how we've met them. Prior to Monday, there were substantial issues with Monterey County being able to meet any variance metrics that the state had put forward. And so we were on a little different time frame in order to submit for a variance. Once the governor changed those metrics on Monday, we had to kind of gear up and get everything ready to see how quickly we could get something before the board for their approval next week, and also for the county health officer to potentially attest that we've met the individual criteria. We want to make sure that it's done in a in a very thoughtful, diligent fashion, so that we're not pushing through something before we're ready. We want to make sure that the plans to move through stage 2 more quickly are in place, so that we know which sectors of the economy should be opening up more quickly than the stage 2 guidelines from the state. So all those little pieces will have to be put into place and put before the Board of Supervisors for potential approval by them, and an attestation by our health officers that we've met the health metrics for our community. We understand that there's a huge pent-up demand here in Monterey County to be able to resume some semblance of normalcy. And in particular, for those people who are not working, to get them back to work as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible. We don't want to have anybody put in harm's way because of making the choice between having to go back to work because their employers ask them to come back to work and or trying to protect their safety, recognizing that there's also some economic hardships that are going out for workers in this community. In addition, there's economic pressures on the business owners in our community that we recognize that need to be addressed and addressed as quickly as possible. I think as most people are aware, Monterey County has a lot of diversity in its economy, but it is driven mainly by the sectors of agriculture and hospitality. Agriculture has been deemed an essential function here in Monterey County, and those businesses have been up and running and providing food to the world. Hospitality is a little more challenging in the sense that the hospitality industry is built on a lot of travel and tourism, and the services that they provide, whether it's in the hotels or some of the attractions that we have here, inherently requires some closeness of people, the tourists, the locals, and we want to make sure that any reopening is done in a way that can protect the workers and protect our local community. So with that said, we're moving, you know, as appropriate speed, deliberate speed at this point to look at moving through stage 2 with a variance, but we want to make sure that we do it in the most prudent fashion possible so that we can balance the needs of our community to reopen and the safety of our residents. So with that, May, I'll turn it back to you and be available for questions.
Thanks very much, Charles. And in regards to questions, I have a lot of questions in that are really specific to the health department, and Dr. Moreno is not in the call today, so I will forward the questions that are specific to the health department to him and to his division and try to get those responses for you. But there are some questions that we can address here. The first is about the testing site move. The Salinas mayor is also saying there will be a testing site at Cesar Chavez Library. Is this true? And why is the testing site at Alisal being moved? And I'm hoping Mike Durr is still on the call.
The Alisal site is being moved at the request of the Alisal School District. They have some scheduled plans and projects that they have already had ongoing. So we're trying to accommodate them by relocating. We do not have a signed agreement with Cesar Chavez Library yet. We had a site visit there yesterday. We are working on getting an agreement in place. And as soon as we do that, we'll look at relocating that test site back to that area. We do have to stay a minimum of 2 weeks at the Ag Commissioner's office once we move a location.
Right, thanks, Mike. And then this is a question on easing restrictions. Charles, this possibly you could answer. How long will it take for you to ease restrictions once the supervisors approve a readiness attestation document and the state signs off on it?
Thank you, man. That's a good question. First, let me go back to a little bit there. One, on the issue with moving the test site. The city of Salinas has been a great partner in trying to identify locations where we can house either test sites or alternative housing sites. So we want to make sure that everybody understands that we're working closely with them, and you know, we're trying to make some final details on how we can open up that move that testing site to the best location to serve the community. And as Mike said, the testing sites need to be stay in one location for at least 2 weeks, and so we'll work through those issues and make sure that we can get the sites, testing sites, in the most appropriate place and the most benefit to the community. And then and also getting questions to Dr. Moreno. I appreciate everybody's understanding right now. His time is quite dear, and everybody is trying to get a piece of him to get different questions answered and stuff looked at and protocols looked at. So we understand the desire to get information from him and get it out to the public through the media, through our media partners here. And just wanted to request your understanding as we try and get him to focus on addressing issues of the health officer that we need him to look at right now, especially trying to make sure that we're putting forward the attestation and variance documents for the board's consideration next week. So a little bit of understanding there would be much appreciated. As for the specific question from, I think it was from Kelly Nix, I think, as far as how long it will take to ease restrictions. A lot of that's going to depend on, first of all, how quickly the state puts up our attestation and basically in an approval process situation. It's not that they put a stamp of approval, but they will have to look at that and see whether we've met the metrics as they say, and then to identify which businesses or sectors within stage 2 would be appropriate under Monterey County's situation. And it should be fairly quick. There will have to be a plan put forward as to how we the county want to move through the variance process for stage 2, if we want to move, as we said, more quickly, what's our plan for opening up those sectors? And part of that is to make sure that those businesses and those sectors have protocols in place and that they're ready to adhere to the protocols that both the state put forward and maybe some of their industry trade groups have put forward for protocols. So it should be pretty quick, but I can't give an exact timeline on how quickly that would be once we get the attestation posted by the state.
Thanks, Charles. And then I have a question on the MPC drive-through testing site. That site, we heard from a listener, this is from KAZU, listener that the MPC drive-through testing site ran out of tests this morning. Do you have any information on that? We don't have any information specific to today, but I can tell you that they can only do 100 tests a day. And if they had enough people there to meet that 100 mark, then they would close for the rest of the day. And we can certainly follow up with Planned Parenthood for additional information on that.
Yeah.
And then I have.
Thanks, Mayor. Let me just jump in. Like it's been great that it's great that they got that up and running so quickly, and the response has been tremendous. And it's you can just drive up and seek a test, which is great. But obviously then they get they get inundated, and it's a good bad thing basically. So we appreciate everybody getting out there to get tested, and MPC and Planned Parenthood putting that on.
Thanks, Charles. And then a little bit of a follow-up to what you spoke to earlier about what kind of businesses could open in stage 2. Do you know what kind of businesses or operations would be allowed to reopen during under the variants that they're working on?
Well, if you follow what the state has within their lists for stage 2, it's you can look at those. I'm just trying to pull that up right now. Let's see. Now I can't find it. There we go. So some of the obviously the businesses that we opened up earlier, the construction and golf, and then the curbside retail were the first things that we got through the early part of stage 2. I think the next big pieces that we're looking at here, and hopefully we can get the variants and get the right protocols in place, include the retail stores, so that you could actually have in-store retail with appropriate social distancing and disinfecting, dine-in restaurants potentially. Probably, I think we might look at trying to push some of that out to the streets, as people have said, making sure that there's some ways of having the appropriate distancing. So obviously schools, it's not just the your typical public schools that people might think of, but there are other schools in Monterey County that instructions where people are taking classes on different things that we think might be able to open up in an expanded stage 2. So those are kind of the ones that we're looking at right now, the retail, restaurants, and schools. But there could be some other businesses that people have been looking for, such as pet grooming and car washes. Those kinds of activities might also be considered if we have the right plan in place, if the state approves it, and we can look at easing restrictions there.
Thanks, Charles. And then one more question, you might be able to respond to a part of this or a bit of it. What is your response to businesses that are defying the order? And there have been news reports that in Carmel, some businesses are going to open up tomorrow in advance of our order. Some of this may be an enforcement issue, but you may have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, obviously it's a big enforcement issue, and it's something that we're trying to get our partners in the police that have been great throughout this to look at addressing it. I understand that the pent up demand, as I say, and there are businesses that are really hurting. The risk that we have here is that if we start opening up, if businesses open up before the state authorizes it, we run the risk of the state coming in and trying to impose sanctions on us. They've already sent letters to other jurisdictions where they're threatening to withhold emergency services funding and other funding through the CARES Act, for example, for those jurisdictions that are not following the state orders in relation to shelter in place and opening of businesses. So what I would urge is that the opening is on the horizon. It's really tough for those who don't have a job or those who have business that are trying to stay afloat. But if we don't kind of follow through an orderly process, we run the risk of the state coming in and imposing monetary restrictions on us or withholding money from us, and those monies flow through to our community. In addition, if things aren't handled appropriately as we reopen, or if folks open their businesses too soon without the right kind of public safety protocols, we have a serious risk of backsliding on our numbers. And if our numbers start backsliding, we may have to put into place more restrictions. And that would be very difficult for our community to go backwards and have restrictions imposed on them after they've opened up. So I would just encourage everybody to follow the state order, the local orders, and recognize that we're trying to open up as quickly as possible, but in a way that's safe for all. We have to be safe for the workers. We have to be safe that we're not bringing COVID into our community and spreading it among our community and causing a backslide. So that's my appeal to everybody, that recognize that it's on the horizon. We're close. We're making such great progress, and we don't want to go backwards.
Thanks very much, Charles. And then there is a question about testing site movement and people who made appointments. That I'm going to send that question to the health department so that I can confirm with you that people who made an appointment and the site was changed, that those people will be notified. And then that's all the questions that I have on chat. Is there any questions, any other questions that any of our current participants can answer right now?
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, I'm just asking our media partners if they have any other questions. And I'm not seeing any. So
let me just chime in a little bit more on the businesses opening up. That we certainly don't want to have a law enforcement response to any businesses, and that is obviously the next step. They're trying to use education and work with those businesses. But the law enforcement is going to have to make the decision at some point if there are situations where they have to enforce somebody who's flouting the law and the orders. So we just want to make sure that everybody's safe.
Thanks, Charles. And then any other questions?
Respond to the appointment question.
All right. Well, Mike, can you respond to that appointment question?
Yes, I had direct contact with the site manager and the state on the site. So they will be notifying those that have made appointments past the date that LSL will be active. We also will be posting a site at the location, directing them to the new test site as well.
All right, thank you. All right, and that's all the questions that we have currently. Makes for a short media briefing today, but we'll see you again on Friday. Thanks very much for joining us today.